and related materials. In fact, one of Sandberg's publications, if it is fascination for you, it was published in 1927, and it is called The American Songbook. And Carl Sandburg's New American Song Bag of 1950 was a second edition. He also witnesses firsthand the sharp contrast between, if you will, the haves and have-nots, rich and poor, a dichotomy that instilled in him a distrust of capitalism. In fact, actually, Carl Sandburg is wonderful devil's advocate societally for us. He served in the Spanish-American War, and after his military service, he enrolled at Lombard College, which is now Knox College. There he joined the Poor Writers Club, and there was film. Robin Williams was Dead Poets Society. It is kind of, if you will, a parallel to that situation of Sandburg's. And Sandburg benefited from the advice and encouragement of Professor Philip Green Wright, a talented scholar and political liberal. 1940 was a wonderful year for Sandburg. Following the publication of his Abraham Lincoln, The War Years, in 1939, Sandburg won the Pulitzer Prize for History. He was elected to the Academy of Arts and Letters, and he'd also received honorary doctorates from Harvard, Yale, Wesleyan, New York University, and Lafayette College. Through his childhood memories and adult experiences, Sandburg had fallen in love with America, just like Foss. And Cornhuskers is Sandburg's tribute to the American Midwest and the people who settled it. In other words, us. Known as the Bard of the Midwest for his unrhymed free verse that uses precise and vivid images to portray the energy and, at the same time, the brutality of American urban industrial life and ethnic diversity, Sandburg became a central figure in the flowering of literature in Chicago from roughly 1912 to 1925. And it was said in the 1920s that if you didn't like free verse, you would once you read Sandburg. Many view Sandburg as successor to the 19th century poet Walt Whitman as the proclaimer of the American spirit. He writes in a direct, vernacular language and demonstrates an appreciation of the land, the people, and the creatures of the U.S. At the end of his life, at age 85, Sandburg looked back on his life's work and declared, quote, "Being a poet is a damned dangerous business," close quote. That may be so, but in Cornhuskers, he created one of the first great poetic testaments to the 20th century, and it had a profound effect on Foss, compelling him to set the text to music. Next slide, please. In 1942, Lucas Foss became a naturalized U.S. citizen and fell in love with his new homeland. Foss's own quote, "Shortly after I left Europe and emigrated to this country as a boy of 15, I fell in love with America." Foss read The Prairie the following year and began to set it to music. A colleague, after reviewing the sketches, asked Foss, "Why are you trying to write so American?" Foss's response was, "I wasn't. I was in love. I had discovered America." Many Foss's works connect folk styles or traditional classical styles with contemporary dissonance. So this is Foss assimilating Copeland and, if you will, the pastoral American style that was popular at the time. I'm in no way saying imitator, but channeling things that were popular at the time. The Prairie premiered May 14th, 1944 at New York's Town Hall Theater under the direction of Robert Shaw. Next slide, please. Shaw's Collegiate College Choir sang, along with accompanied by members of the NBC and the CBS concert orchestras. Virgil Thompson, then music critic for the New York Herald Tribune, wrote in his May 6, 1944 review, quote, "The work itself showed musicianship, imagination, and direct expressive powers of no mean order. Mr. Foss's language is elegant, scholastic, dainty, and it is adjusted for precise depiction rather than for emotional excitement." Irving Fine, in the May-June 1945 issue of Modern Music, was equally complimentary. Quote, "The Prairie is an extremely ambitious undertaking and is one of the most impressive contributions to American choral literature. Foss's writing involves counterpoint and a rich harmony which is not as pure as Copland's." Interesting point there made by the critics. The following year, in January of 1945, Arthur Widzinski conducted the Westminster Choir and the New York Phil in a performance of the work. The critics this time, though, were less enthusiastic. Donald Fuller wrote, quote, "Though far too long and weighed down by the fruitless choice of a Carl Sandburg text, it is impressive for its controlled handling of such a full medium." So I guess that's kind of a left-handed compliment. Similarly, Time magazine commented, "Foss's music is far from Sandburg's Prairie. It's modern, sophisticated, plainly rooted in Europe. The work's only recording was released in 1976 to coincide with the bicentennial and launch of Foss's An American Cantata by the Long Island Symphonic Choral Association. Greg Smith, conductor, and was supported in part by a Ford Foundation grant." So we have this kind of roller coaster ride with Foss's career and his works. Next slide. The Prairie is scored for solo voices, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, choir, and chamber orchestra. It is 50 minutes in duration and crafted in a rounded binary form, in other words, an ABA form. The work is intended to be performed without intermission. Foss himself adapted excerpts from Sandburg's Prairie without the aid of librettists. In fact, Foss's quote, "Someone advised me to obtain permission from the author before getting too deeply into the work. But I was already half finished, and I decided that I would send a long, pleading, begging letter to Carl Sandburg." And so he did. And Sandburg responded actually quite promptly with a copy of a note that he had sent to his publisher, Holt. Mrs. Sandburg's quote from his note, "This young man has the right sporting spirit. Give him a break." It would be interesting to project how this might have played out in 2010 when we are such a litigious society. It might not have had such a positive outcome for Foss. But fortunately for us, Carl Sandburg made a rather magnanimous gesture. There is, interestingly, a significant rearrangement of Sandburg's text to craft the 7 movements that comprise the work. For purposes of our discussion this afternoon, we're going to take a look at 3 movements. The first, "I Was Born on the Prairie." The second, "Dust of Men," and the closing movement of the cantata, "Tomorrow." The first is entitled "I Was Born on the Prairie."